Sir Ian Wood, what role do you see for Aberdeen in the future when it comes to the oil and gas industry?
Well, I think there's no doubt Aberdeen has the potential not just to be the offshore oil capital of Europe, but for the Eastern Hemisphere. And that really certainly would take account of Middle East into mid-Asia. I think probably Perth, Australia is going to be probably the main hub for Asia Pacific, but certainly for a very large part of the Eastern Hemisphere, we should be the kind of key headquarter for major contracting companies, major service companies.
And what do you think must be done to maximise the recovery in the North Sea?
I think there's a need for a clear government programme, which is the fiscal and regulatory programme, which is aimed at literally maximising. I mean, UK government up to recently have seen the North Sea as the current income for next year, how much tax we're going to get for next year. Then now, as we get really quite mature, it needs to be a different thing, which is how do we get the most out of the North Sea in the next 30 years? And I mean, the difference between the low estimate of that and the high estimate of that in terms of value is about $600 billion. So there's a huge amount of economic value for the UK now to start focusing on maximising the recovery as opposed to how much do we get in the next 2 or 3 years. I think government's beginning to understand that. There's a whole range of measures, technical, fiscal, regulatory measures, which can be aimed at encouraging exploration, and Norway's introduced some specific measures to encourage exploration, to encourage particularly the very high-cost, high-pressure, high-temperature wells, which are extraordinarily expensive west of Shetland right now, a highly prolific area, to focus on some of the small fields, the very small reservoirs. How can we ensure we recover most of them? How can we ensure the infrastructure stays in place for as long as possible? There's a whole series of measures can be taken, and hopefully government have now got this in their agenda.
As chairman of Wood Group with 22,000 employees in 40-some countries around the world, what do you think other UK companies can learn from your company?
I think the key thing is to understand it's not just a question of going overseas with your product and service and selling it. You actually need to understand the country you're going to. You need to understand the market you're going to. You need to build up a relationship. And you mustn't assume that business is done the same way. You mustn't go with a UK mindset and think business is done in the same way. Frankly, in many countries internationally, the way to do business isn't necessarily to use your UK resources. Where are the most cost-effective, competitive resources in different parts of the world? So, for example, we're manufacturing a lot in China now. We're manufacturing in a number of Eastern European countries. We're using a global workforce from all over the world. So it's the global mindset, I think, is the key next step as indigenous companies move internationally. It's developing quite a different mindset and approach to the market.